Missouri, 1873. The frontier is closing, but isolation breeds strange beliefs. In the backwoods of Taney County, a family keeps a secret that will shock even hardened frontier doctors. A boy born without arms or legs, treated not as disabled, but as divine. His relatives bow before him, bring him offerings, speak to him in whispers. They call him their living God. When the outside world finally discovers what's happening in that remote cabin, the truth is darker than anyone imagined. You think you know frontier medicine. You think you understand religious fervor. But this case will challenge everything you believe about family, faith, and the lengths people will go to find meaning in suffering. If you value documented American frontier history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Missouri State Archives and frontier medical journals. Now back to the story. The Ozark Mountains in 1873. Dense forests, rocky hollows, families scattered across valleys with no roads connecting them. Mail comes twice a year if you're lucky. The nearest doctor lives 40 miles away in Springfield. Out here, you make your own rules. You solve your own problems. And sometimes you create your own gods. The Whitmore family has been in these hills since 1848. Jeremiah Whitmore, his wife Sarah, their 4 children. But inbreeding runs deep in these isolated communities. Sarah is actually Jeremiah's second cousin. Their oldest son married his half-sister. Their daughter wed her uncle. By 1873, the family tree looks more like a family wreath. Then comes the birth that changes everything. March 15th, 1873. Sarah Whitmore goes into labor during a late winter storm. No midwife can reach them through the snow. Jeremiah delivers the baby himself by candlelight. What emerges from the womb defies everything they've seen. A perfectly formed head and torso, but no arms, no legs, just smooth skin where limbs should be. The medical term is tetramelia, 1 in 71,000 births. But the Whitmores don't know medical terms. They know signs from God. The baby breathes. The baby cries. His eyes focus and track movement. His mind is sharp, alert, aware. Jeremiah stares at this impossible child and makes a decision that will define the next 3 years. This is not a curse. This is a blessing. This is divine. They name him Ezekiel. Like the prophet who saw wheels within wheels, visions no ordinary man could witness. Within weeks, the family is treating the infant differently than any child before. They don't just care for Ezekiel. They revere him. They worship him. They build an altar. The worship starts small. Sarah places wildflowers beside Ezekiel's cradle each morning. Jeremiah reads Bible verses aloud, not to teach the infant, but to honor him. The other children approach on their knees. By summer of 1873, the entire family structure has shifted. Ezekiel doesn't just live in their cabin. He rules it. They construct a special wooden throne, carved from oak and padded with deer hide. Ezekiel sits propped against cushions, watching his family with dark, intelligent eyes. He cannot speak yet, but they interpret his expressions as divine communication. A smile means blessing. A cry means judgment. His family lives in constant attention to his moods. The isolation deepens their delusion. No neighbors to question their behavior. No preacher to correct their theology. No doctor to explain the medical reality. Just a family and their living God, creating their own twisted religion in the Missouri wilderness. By 1874, the worship becomes systematic. Morning prayers directed at Ezekiel. Evening offerings of food placed before his throne. The family begins fasting 1 day each week, believing their hunger pleases their divine child. When neighbors occasionally visit, the Whitmores hide Ezekiel away, claiming he's too sacred for outsider eyes. The boy grows. His mind develops normally despite his physical limitations. He learns to speak by age 2, and his first words send shivers through his family. Hungry, he says, but they hear divine command. They prepare elaborate meals, feeding him by hand while they themselves eat scraps. Cold, he says during winter, They pile furs around his throne while they shiver in thin clothes. Ezekiel begins to understand his power. He's not stupid. He sees how his family reacts to his words, his expressions, his needs. He learns to manipulate their worship for his comfort. When he wants attention, he cries. When he wants food, he smiles. When he's bored, he makes demands that send his family scrambling. The psychological dynamic turns sinister. Ezekiel is physically helpless but emotionally dominant. His family has all the strength but surrenders all the power. They become slaves to a child they've elevated as master. The reversal is complete when Jeremiah begins asking Ezekiel's permission for basic decisions. Which crops to plant, whether to trade with neighbors, when to slaughter livestock. A 3-year-old boy without limbs is making survival decisions for 6 adults. Spring of 1875. Drought hits Taney County hard. Crops fail across the region. Families pack up and head to towns where work might be found. The Whitmores stay. They believe Ezekiel will provide. They pray to their child god for rain. When rain doesn't come, they interpret this as a test of faith. They eat tree bark and boiled roots while reserving the last stored grain for Ezekiel's meals. By summer, the family is starving. Sarah Whitmore weighs less than 90 pounds. Jeremiah can barely work their failing farm. The other children show signs of malnutrition, but Ezekiel remains well-fed, healthy, seated on his throne while his family wastes away around him. The 3-year-old has become a parasite consuming his own bloodline. The madness peaks during harvest season. What little corn they manage to grow, they offer to Ezekiel first. He cannot possibly eat full ears of corn, but they pile them before his throne anyway, letting the food rot as tribute while the family goes hungry. Neighbors notice smoke no longer rises from the Whitmore chimney. No one has seen Jeremiah at the trading post in months. If you value documented Viking and Norse-era history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Missouri State Archives and Frontier Medical Journals. Now back to the story. October 12th, 1875. Samuel Morrison, the nearest neighbor 5 miles east, rides to the Whitmore cabin to check on the family. What he finds inside will haunt frontier communities for decades. The family is alive but skeletal. They kneel around a small throne where a 3-year-old boy sits surrounded by rotting food offerings. Morrison tries to speak to Jeremiah, but the man only whispers, pointing to the child as if Morrison should bow too. Morrison is a practical frontier farmer. He sees a disabled boy and a family driven mad by isolation and inbreeding. He loads the entire family into his wagon and drives 40 miles to Springfield, to the office of Dr. Harold Fleming, the only trained physician in 3 counties. Dr. Fleming documents what he sees in his medical journal, preserved now in Missouri State Archives. Child presents with complete absence of all 4 limbs, likely congenital. Mental faculties appear normal. Family exhibits severe malnutrition and what can only be described as religious mania centered on the disabled child. Parents claim child speaks to God and delivers divine commands. The examination reveals the medical truth behind 3 years of worship. Ezekiel is simply a bright child born with a rare condition called tetraamelia syndrome.
No divine powers.
No special connection to God. Just a boy who learned to survive by exploiting his family's superstitions and guilt about his condition. Dr. Fleming finds evidence of the child's manipulation in his advanced vocabulary and calculated emotional responses during examination. The family refuses to accept medical explanation. Even faced with scientific reality, they insist Ezekiel is divine. Sarah Whitmore tells Dr. Fleming that ordinary medicine cannot understand celestial beings. Jeremiah claims the doctor lacks faith to recognize a living God. The other children parrot their parents' beliefs, calling Ezekiel their sacred brother. Dr. Fleming makes a decision that splits the family apart. He declares Ezekiel a ward of the state and places him in the Springfield Foundling Home, an institution for disabled and orphan children. The Whitmore family fights the decision but has no legal standing. They're barely literate frontier farmers with no money for lawyers. On November 3, 1875, Ezekiel leaves his throne forever. The separation devastates both sides. The Whitmore family loses their purpose, their God, their reason for existence. Without Ezekiel to worship, they have no structure, no meaning. Within 6 months, the family scatters. Jeremiah drinks himself to death by spring. Sarah dies of consumption that winter. The other children drift to different relatives, carrying their warped religious ideas to new communities. Ezekiel faces a different trauma. After 3 years as a worship deity, he becomes just another disabled child in a crowded institution.
No throne, no offerings.
No family bowing to his commands. The Springfield Foundling Home provides basic care but no special treatment. For a boy accustomed to absolute power, the adjustment is brutal. The home's records show Ezekiel's difficult transition. He throws tantrums when staff don't respond to his demands like his family did. He expects to be fed elaborate meals while others eat simple fare. He waits for visitors who never come, relatives who consider him sacred but won't fight institutions to reclaim him. The child god becomes just another ward of the state. By 1876, Ezekiel adapts to institutional life. His intelligence serves him well in structured environments. He learns to read and write using adaptive techniques. The home's director, Margaret Holcomb, notes in her reports that Ezekiel shows remarkable resilience and mental capacity, despite his physical limitations and traumatic early childhood. But the larger story spreads through Ozark communities. Families isolated in remote hollows hear about the Whitmores and their living God. Some dismiss it as frontier madness. Others see it as religious revelation. By 1877, at least 3 other families in Missouri and Arkansas are reportedly treating disabled children as divine figures. The Whitmore case has planted seeds of similar delusions across the region. The boy who was once treated as a god integrates into normal society through education and social contact. His intelligence and determination overcome both his physical disability and psychological trauma. He makes friends with other children, who quickly forget about his missing limbs and focus on his sharp wit and competitive spirit in academic contests. By 1881, Ezekiel graduates from Springfield Elementary School with highest honors and receives admission to Missouri State Normal School to train as a teacher. His achievements prove that children with severe physical disabilities can thrive intellectually when given proper support and education. The young man who once sat on a throne as a living god now plans to spend his life educating others. His transformation from worshipped object to productive citizen represents triumph over both disability and religious extremism. But his early childhood leaves permanent psychological scars. He never discusses his family or his years as their deity. Meanwhile, the original Whitmore property sits abandoned in the Taney County wilderness. Neighbors report strange activities around the old cabin site. People come from distant communities to see where the boy god once lived. Some leave offerings. Others pray. A few claim to receive visions or divine messages from the empty site. By 1885, Ezekiel has become a certified teacher and accepts his first position at a one-room schoolhouse in Greene County, Missouri. His students, initially startled by his appearance, quickly adapt to his teaching methods and respect his knowledge. Parents report their children come home excited about their teacher's lessons and innovative instructional techniques. The contrast is complete. The boy once worshipped by his family as divine now serves his community through education. He has transformed from passive object of reverence to active contributor to society. His life path demonstrates that proper medical understanding and social support can help disabled individuals achieve independence and purpose. But the psychological cost remains evident. Colleagues note that Ezekiel never forms close personal relationships. He lives alone, focuses entirely on his professional duties, and avoids social situations involving families or children. The early trauma of being treated as divine rather than human has left him unable to connect normally with others despite his professional success. 1890 brings a surprising development. Ezekiel receives a letter from his surviving half-sister, Rebecca, now living in Arkansas with her own family. She expresses regret about their childhood and requests a meeting to discuss their shared past. For the first time since leaving his family 15 years earlier, Ezekiel must confront his origins directly. The reunion takes place in Springfield under Dr. Fleming's supervision. Rebecca, now 32 years old, brings her 3 children to meet their uncle. She has apparently recovered from the family's religious delusions and wants to establish normal relationships, but the meeting proves difficult for both siblings. Ezekiel finds himself uncomfortable around children, even his own relatives. Rebecca struggles to see him as a normal person rather than the divine figure she worshipped during her own childhood. Both carry psychological scars from their shared trauma that make genuine connection nearly impossible. They part cordially but make no plans for future contact. The failed reunion confirms Dr. Fleming's concerns about the long-term effects of religious abuse on children. Even when victims achieve external success, internal damage often persists throughout their lives. The early formation of abnormal family dynamics creates patterns that resist later correction, regardless of education or therapeutic intervention. 1897 marks 22 years since Ezekiel's removal from his family. He continues teaching and has been promoted to principal of a larger school in Jefferson City. His professional accomplishments represent remarkable recovery from childhood trauma. But the final twist comes from an unexpected source. In 1898, construction workers demolishing an old barn on the original Whitmore property make a grisly discovery. Buried beneath the floorboards, the skeletal remains of 3 infants, all showing signs of severe physical deformities, all wrapped in rotting cloth that once might have been ceremonial robes. The Whitmore family didn't just worship one disabled child as divine. They had been killing the others. Medical examination reveals the infants died from deliberate suffocation within days of birth. Carbon dating places their deaths between 1868 and 1872, the years before Ezekiel's birth. Dr. Fleming's final report concludes the family had been murdering disabled babies for years, considering them either cursed or unworthy of their later divine worship. Ezekiel was not their first disabled child. He was simply the first they decided to keep alive. The boy they called their living God had 3 dead siblings buried beneath his shrine.